What's up, people? Happy Monday. Just kidding. There's no such thing. Anywho, she's Jessie. I'm her best friend, Emerson. This is The Sweat, a show that's here to help you guys get those DFS lineups locked and loaded.
So we're going to take care of you on the ice and the links tonight, as well as on the hardwood. And why not just start there?
Okay, sounds good
hardwood.
to me.
So let's say what up to our NBA panel of DK Live's Julian Edlow and Gary Thorne.
It's everyone's favorite game, not named Plinko, and that would be NBA pick and roll. So who would you choose between the following options we present to you? Please pay attention, Julian.
Now it's a battle of the rookies on this 7-game slate. Trae Young is the top price guard at $9,300 visiting Miami. Then Luka Doncic is $200 cheaper at Brooklyn. So who would you rather roster, Jules?
Yeah, I think I understand the rules, Emerson. I'm going to go with Luka Doncic here. I understand what Trae Young did the other night. That was absolutely amazing, even though it did take 4 overtimes to get to those 87 DraftKings points. And he was terrific before that as well. 62 against Minnesota. He was really, running pretty hot. He got ejected once he became, chalk against Chicago on Sunday after just 18 minutes and busted a lot of lineups. I just think he's due for some regression. It's not as great of a matchup against Miami. He's all the way up there at $9,300. Like, just can't miss stud pricing now on Trae Young. So it's a little bit of a fade on Young, but I do think Doncic is in a good spot against Brooklyn here. I don't care as much about saving the $200. I just think Doncic has been kind of priced at this point ever since Dallas made that trade and just has a better chance on a night-to-night basis of giving you that stud production, and I like his matchup a lot better against Brooklyn.
Gary, do you just think Luka Doncic is the more solid option?
I think, like Julian said, it just comes a lot back to matchup, and it's tough. Like, Trae Young has had a very, very good run. I mean, historic even for a rookie across the last 10 games, but you kind of go through those box scores. I don't want to take anything away from him, but the opposition wasn't exactly the most stout. And Miami, for all their faults as an actual assembled team, they're incredibly slow and they're very good on defense. And it just doesn't seem like it's the ideal spot. Now, when you compare these two across those 10 games, like Trae Young has had the highest time in possession of any NBA player in that span. Like, he has the ball in his hands constantly, but so does Luka. He's second only LeBron in touches across that same span. Brooklyn's top 6 in opponent points, rebounds, and assists in that same span of time. I just have to go with the better matchup for two players who are pretty similar right now.
All right, San Antonio's DeMar DeRozan is looking relatively cheap this evening at $7,700 versus Denver. Gary, and you like him, or how about Milwaukee's Chris Middleton, who's coming off a 50-plus DK point effort, facing the worst team in the league right now? That would be the Phoenix Suns.
I honestly don't like either, but if I had to pick one, I would side with DeRozan, even with the price differential. Middleton's minutes seem scary to me tonight. He's already a player who doesn't play an exceedingly high total on a per-game basis. He only exceeded 35 minutes in 8 games this season. One of those was that contest in Utah, and that's the thing. When they lose games or are in close games, sure, Middleton's going to play, but I don't think the Suns are going to be hanging around the Bucks, even at home. I think you just go with DeRozan. He's actually been averaging more DraftKings points per minute since the All-Star break, even with Middleton playing this well. So I think even with the price differential, I'd go with DeMar.
All right, I know you say you don't like either one. You picked one anyway, but who would maybe give us another guy in this price range you like?
Maybe you take it over and try to find a point guard who's got shooting guard eligibility. These two guys in particular, I'm just not huge fans of their ceiling right now. Even DeMar, ever since Derek White came back, he has really cut into his usage rate. So I think that, again, I would probably avoid both these players.
All right, who do you like out of these two, Jules?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page as Gary in here. I would lean DeRozan between the two. He is just $7,700 and was priced a few games ago at $8,500. So there is some upside to, targeting a guy after his salary comes down $800. He has averaged slightly over 40 DraftKings points in a couple of matchups against Denver this season. So I would lean with DeRozan just like Gary. And just to throw another guy out here in this price range, closer to Middleton, really, Lou Williams for $6,800 going up against the Lakers. He's been a guy, he only had to play 22 minutes yesterday against the Knicks in that game that was a blowout that got even closer than it was the rest of the game towards the end. He had 32 DK points in those 22 minutes. He's been a guy this season that averages close to 47 DraftKings points in 2 matchups against the Lakers. And some of those games came when Tobias Harris was still with the team. So now even more shots for him. Lou Williams is the guard in this price range that I'm the most interested in.
Interesting. Lou Williams, who you mentioned in your NBA cheat sheet today.
You've been reading, Emerson. I'm proud of you.
Highly recommend it to everyone at home as well. You can study before you study with us here on The Sweat.
He has to sound out
And
the
now
words.
I don't even have to plug it so Reed doesn't get mad at me.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry about Reed.
His
He's
reading
big time
comprehension
now.
is getting so much better, you guys. We're so proud. He's been sounding the words out really well. All right, guys. Nikola Jokic is by far the highest priced center on the slate at 10-3. Julian, do you want to pay up that much for him, or are you going to like save some cash maybe on Phoenix rookie DeAndre Ayton, who $3,000 less? $3,000 less.
That's a big save.
Fresh off of that 50 DK point game, like maybe you just want to save that much money?
So I have zero interest in Ayton going up against the Bucks. I just think it's a really bad matchup for him. A spot that he's going to fall off coming off of those 50 DK points. Jokic interests me in tournaments because I think you're going to get really low ownership on him because of all the chalk center plays on this slate. So Jokic is a guy that if you want to go really contrarian in a tournament, I think this is some of the lowest ownership that you'll get on him in a while. Against San Antonio this season, though, he has struggled. He averages less than 35 DK points in 2 games against them. So that's just another reason I think Jokic will be way off the radar. You've got 2 really cheap chalk centers in Alex Len, who's been getting all the minutes up front for the Hawks lately, and Dwight Powell, who's been starting for Dallas up against Brooklyn. So a lot of ownership is going to go to those guys. If you are going to pay up for a center, I think the guy in the best spot is probably Rudy Gobert going against the Pelicans. Anthony Davis is still questionable for them. Jahlil Okafor is doubtful for them, so they might not have many bodies up front there. I think if I want to spend at center, it's going to be Rudy Gobert for me. And then there's those 2 other cheap chalk guys. So if you do play Ayton or Jokic, you're going to get really low ownership on both, but only do that in tournaments, not safe cash game plays there.
Gary, and Ayton's had 3 double-doubles in his last 4 games. You still not interested in him, though?
No, you can't have any interest in Ayton tonight. I mean, the numbers are staggering when you really break down how good Milwaukee's been against interior players so far this season. I mean, first and foremost, they just allow the fewest DraftKings points to centers per game of any team in the league. And the reason for that is they allow the fewest points in the paint of any Eastern Conference team, and they allow the fewest made field goals within 5 feet of any team in the NBA. They are more than content to stack and pack the paint and just make you beat them with jump shots. That's what they've done all year long with their defense. I agree with what Julian was saying, though. I think there's going to be a lot of cheap centers on the board tonight. So if you do want to spend up on Jokic, I'm never really in a situation where I'm not at least kind of interested in Jokic. He just touches the ball way too much. So a great GPP play tonight. But there is a lot of guys to save on. And that duo with the Jazz going up against a depleted team in New Orleans who is just running teams out of the building right now in terms of their pace. It's going to be hard to ignore those guys who are just kind of moderately priced.
You mentioned cheap centers. Perfect segue here, Garion. Looking for some value from a big man? Of course you are. How about Sacramento's Willie Cauley-Stein, though? Cost 5.8, delivering 41 DK points in his last game. The Kings hosting the 13-win Knicks. Or at the same price, how about Utah's Derek Favors? You just mentioned the Jazz, Garion. Power forward and center eligible. He went off for 54 fantasy points on Saturday. So where would you go here?
I think I'm going to go with Favors. It's probably a pipe dream to expect him to get 50 DK points again, but like I mentioned, the Pelicans' pace right now is insane. They are averaging 110.3 possessions per 48 minutes across their last 5 games. It's like 108 if you want to go back 10 games. They've just decided they're going to run the ball up and down the court. Anthony Davis might not play. Jahlil Okafor might not play. Maybe this game just gets too lopsided. That would be the fear here, but I just think Favors at this price point. He's been like a top 10 9-cat player the last 2 weeks. He's just been really, really reliable and really good. And for Cauley-Stein, I mean, it's nothing against him. The Knicks are a pretty good matchup for a center to have, but you look at his usage rate since Barnes showed up in Sacramento, it's dropped from 19.5% to 14.5%. That's just not a lot of touches for a guy who you're still paying almost $6K for.
Yeah, good point, Gary. And he's been a double-double machine. Favors has been a huge part of the Jazz's recent surge, really, in the standings. At least 32 DK fantasy points in 5 of his past 6 contests. Seems kind of like a no-brainer to pick him between these two, right, Julian? Or no?
I mean, yeah, Favors was going to be my guy here. And a big reason, though, because of that, I love the matchup. I think it's great. I think he's been playing really well lately. But his power forward eligibility, we just talked about how much of a logjam there is at center on this slate. So that creates another really valuable way for you to fit him into your lineups. So because of that, I'll play a little devil's advocate and go with Willie Cauley-Stein. I hate that he was $4,500 in his last game, and now he's $5,800. That's not generally how you want to target guys when they go up $1,300 in salary, but he did prove that he can be worth it. That was Marvin Bagley's first game out with a knee injury. Cauley-Stein played 31 minutes, had 41.5 DraftKings points. And now he goes up against the Knicks, who are terrible against every position. He does draw Mitchell Robinson, which is a little bit concerning. But still a rookie, still, susceptible to a bad matchup. So Willie Cauley-Stein is just a guy. I think center ownership is going to go elsewhere. So if you go with him over Favors at your center or utility spot, you're going to get significantly lower ownership on him. But I agree with most of the points Gary made. Favors is probably the safer call here.
All right, you guys, please hang tight. We got Tears of Joy coming up right after we talk golf, which is right after Brendan Glasheen explains why Emerson thinks the Jaguars are going to win the Super Bowl next season.
Hey, it's Brendan Glasheen, and with this DraftKings Fantasy Flash, the Jaguars are expected to sign Nick Foles next week when free agency begins. The Super Bowl 52 MVP once again magically pushed the Eagles into the postseason. Foles started the final 5 games of the regular season in place of the injured Carson Wentz. Now the 30-year-old quarterback has landed his own show, the chance to lead a team in a different city. Foles said at the end of the 2018 season he wanted the opportunity to impact the locker room and create an atmosphere. No need to worry about a competing young quarterback behind him, as the Jags intend to release the still undeveloped 26-year-old Blake Bortles. The Foles pickup also proves Jacksonville wants to maximize the talent and window it has on defense. And while that unit struggled last year, the Jags still finished top 5 in total defense, pass defense, and scoring defense. Plus, they return almost all their starters. Once the signing becomes official, the Jags' focus shifts to providing Foles some weaponry. Outside of Dede Westbrook and Marquise Lee, there's no certainty as it pertains to offensive personnel. It's a win-now mode situation for Duval. Does Foles' magic carry over down south? We'll see.
When I say Arnold Palmer, you probably think of a delicious combination of both lemonade and iced tea. You probably also think about one of the most famous golfers in history, Arnold Palmer. They drink his name after him. I don't know if you knew that.
I do now after that history lesson. Absolute incredible work by you, Jessie. Coffield.
You're welcome.
He is so famous, though. He does have a tournament named after him. This guy was the epitome of cool before even Tiger and all the other guys made golf cool. The Arnold Palmer Invitational kicking off this week at Bay Hill in Orlando. Let's bring in our golf panel to talk about it. DK Live, Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich, plus DFS expert, Mr. Jeff Eisenband.
All right, guys, PGA high or low is where we begin. So are these odds too high or too low for the following golfers? So world number 2, Justin Rose, is plus 1,100. Those are the third best odds. Reed, too high or too low?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little too low on this, and he is a number ranked 2 golfer. Dustin Johnson obviously got that with his win, so he's back at number 1. And whenever you get Justin Rose on any course, obviously he's one of the favorites to win. Just for me personally, I'd rather look elsewhere. Justin Rose hasn't played since the Farmers, but here, 4 top 10 since 2011, 3 of those were top 3, so course history is there. And recent form is he's playing well. I mean, we had some speculation with the new irons coming into this season, but obviously with a guy like Justin Rose, he can dial in with the best. And so for me, I think just a little too low. I'd rather see him at 15, but you're not going to get the number 2 ranked golfer who's coming off of a win in his next tournament get anywhere near that. But for me, too low.
Jeff with the G, where are you going on this one?
Yeah, look, okay, it's Monday. I'm a little tired. I'm trying to follow along here. I've been planning my trip down to Jacksonville for the Super Bowl.
Woo! Yeah, all right.
I'm going to agree with Reed, though. I think these odds are a little too low. I mean, Justin Rose coming off some rest. Look, this guy's been in great form since, late fall, and that's fine and stuff. But, I mean, he hasn't played on Bermuda. This is going to be his first start in the Florida swing. He's coming off some rest, like I mentioned. I don't know. I mean, it seems like a really low number for a guy who generally has won like once or twice a year for the last 3 or 4 years. And he's already won once this year. So we're asking a lot, it seems like, for Justin Rose here. I mean, the course history is fine. Like I said, he's been playing well. I think I like him a little bit more next week after we see what we get from him here. I think if I'm going to pay up for a golfer like around this price, I'd rather just go to Brooks Koepka, who we saw last week, excuse me. Looks like he's ready to win again.
Jeff with a J, what do you think? These guys seem a little bullish on JR because, you haven't seen him play in a while.
Yeah, I'll play a little devil's advocate here. I think over the course of the last year, he's been the best player in the world. And I guess I'll put it in comparison. I don't like Ricky Fowler with the second best odds better than Justin Rose here. He's at plus 1,000. I think that Justin Rose should have better odds than him. He's got, we said he hasn't played since the Farmers, which on the PGA Tour, which he did win. He's got a top three, in 6 of his last 11 events. So I just think those odds are too high because they should be better than Ricky Fowler.
Okay, last year's runner-up, Bryson DeChambeau, plus 1,800 for this year's tournament. So Jeff with the G, I will start with you here. Is that too high or too low?
I'm going to say it might even be a little bit too high. It's probably just about right. But, I mean, you just have to look back at what Bryson's done over the last 6 months. And his win rate has been fantastic. I mean, he's racked up 4 or 5 wins. I can't even keep up with how many times this guy's winning. But, the recent form, the tournament in Mexico might put some people off him this week, and I understand that. But, runner-up last year, and the only reason he didn't catch Rory McIlroy is because Rory basically put in one of the historically good putting performance. So there's nothing wrong with the course history here. He's coming off a week of rest. He was in just fine form before that WGC event in Mexico. And I think this venue suits Bryson just to a T. It's a great par 5 score. You have to take advantage of the short par 5s at Bay Hill. And again, with the Arnold Palmer theme, he came out last year and said this is definitely an event he wants to target. So I think these are great odds for Bryson DeChambeau this week. Yeah,
and before that error-filled week in Mexico, DeChambeau's other 5 starts this year have all led to top 15 finishes. So it might be a little outlier there in Mexico. Eisenbahn, what do you think about his odds, though, for this week, plus 1,800?
Yeah, I think they're too high, and for that reason that Jeff with a G mentioned, win rate. You look at what he's done. He's won 4 of his last 12 events, 4 of 9 before those 3 top 15 finishes you mentioned. So if we're talking just straight up win rate, and a guy who's done it in big venues like FedEx Cup playoff venues, WGCs, when the eyes are on him, he has found a way to win events. So I think if you're just looking, there's a big jump from second to first. I think that Bryson DeChambeau is a guy who closes it out and gets those wins.
All right, Reed, your thoughts on these odds. Might I add, my father-in-law likes this guy so much, he actually cut all of his clubs the same length, just like Bryson does. But my father-in-law,
look at that.
My father-in-law is still really bad at golf.
Hopefully he's watching this show that you just put him on ice.
Definitely not.
I'm going to agree with these guys. I'm going to make it 3 for 3. I think Bryson, especially where he's at, you have Jason Day around those same odds. And frankly, when you look at both of these guys and where they're coming into current form, Jason Day obviously has the course history here, but like Jeff was mentioning, Ulrich, if it wasn't for Rory's 10 strokes that he gained on the greens over that tournament, then it would have been Bryson's. I mean, he only lost to Rory by 3 strokes. And so when you get a guy who has a course history like Bryson, although albeit very short, he is gaining strokes on all the key metrics. We talked about par 5 scoring. They're the 4 easiest holes on the course, and Bryson is top, I think, 6 over the last 24 rounds in strokes gained par 5. He does scare you a little bit with his long irons, but at the same time, I mean, when you get a guy who's playing this well, I'm going to agree with these guys, 18-1 too high.
All right, Honda Classic winner Keith Mitchell is plus 12,500 to win this weekend. So, Reed, too high or too low?
I mean, just based off that he just won, I think it's too high. I mean, I find it hard to believe that any of us are probably going to lean in on this one just because, obviously, to win back-to-back, and especially with the tournament, a tough one last week, it's going to take a lot out of you. So I'm going to say it's too high, just in the premise that he just won. But, I mean, he's never played here, 3 missed cuts, and I think it's like just inside the top 75 in his last 4 starts on the PGA Tour. This was something that we really saw, like how good of a putt that he made. I mean, the stats coming into that putt, I think over 15 feet on the green, didn't do that well. And he makes that putt. He hit some really key shots. I just think with all of that being said, how hard it is to grind at 125, I'd say it's too high just because it's hard to say it's too low because this guy just won. So too high for me.
Jeff with a G, he finally got his first PGA win on Sunday. Too high or too low?
Okay, Reed's confusing me. If we don't like him, he's too low, right?
Yes. Yes, the answer is yes.
God. Reed.
Just think of it like this. Too short or too long?
Monday, man. You can't do this to me. Okay.
Too high.
I do agree with what Reed said. He's a little bit too low. I mean, is Keith Mitchell going to win twice in a row? He's got a chance. If you want to use him on DraftKings, I think that's fine. I mean, look, ball striking. He likes Bermuda greens. That's fine. I mean, another top 20 performance, but like I'm not betting him to win outright 2 weeks in a row. What's he going to beat? Rory and Day and Justin Rose? No, he's not going to win. So these are a little bit too low. They're juiced up, or they're juiced down, I guess, because he won last week. But DraftKings-wise, I still think you can ride him for one more week.
Eisenbahn, where are you going?
Yeah, they're too low just because you're also betting on him winning back-to-back. And I think we saw at the end after he made that putt, I mean, he was drained 4 days out of him getting that Honda Classic victory. I think it's worth noting, even though I think these are too low and I would stay as far away, even whatever the odds are for Keith Mitchell. He is a really good player, and he's got the club head speed. And I think as you go down the line, he's a guy to take a look at. Also, Emerson, the Palm Beach media tearing him apart. You see the Palm Beach
winner. Oh, that headline.
No-name champion.
Ooh, that headline.
He stares down Brooks Koepka and Ricky Fowler. That's not what Keith Mitchell deserves. We call him by his name.
Wait, Eisenbahn, at 125, when are we ever going to get a previous winner 1 week ago at 125? I mean, that's... Of course, like we don't think that Keith Mitchell is going to win, but
you understand. I'm saying I'm factoring in the narrative. Also, he's got to do it again.
Yeah.
You rarely see guys win back-to-back weeks on the PGA Tour in general, and this is Keith Mitchell, who we'll call by his name. But I'm still
top 10 stroke gain approach over the last 24 rounds. He drives the ball a ton as well. I mean, that's kind of what you need here. So.
Yeah, the no-name thing was a little,
that was brutal.
Little aggressive for him. And all my Game of Thrones people will know, a man needs a name, right? Yeah? Anyone? All right, excellent work, you three. You'll be back for PGA pin placement. You get it? Okay, thanks, Samir.
Oh, my God.
We all know, though, a certain broadcaster is hanging up his mic, putting the pads back on. Maybe I should do that. Luckily for us, our own Adam Kaufman talked to Mike Francesa about the big news.
Once again, joined by Mike Francesa, host of Mike's On, WFAN in New York. Adam Kaufman here with you. Mike, plenty of us like to talk sports. You made a career out of doing it. Jason Witten tried it for a year, and now he's going back to the field. From the Monday Night Football booth right back to the Dallas Cowboys. What's he going to look like after a year away?
A very happy man, and a very relieved man. You know, someone asked me, there were rumors that he was going to join the team in the playoffs, and I said, he won't do that. I said, he won't do that because it's too hard to do. But I said, don't be surprised if he comes back next year. I'm not surprised at all. This gives him a graceful out. That's what it really is more than anything else. I don't know how he passed the audition because he's just god awful. I mean, I mean, I've met him a few times. He's always been one of my favorite players. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer in my mind. He was a dreadful broadcaster. He wasn't bad. He was dreadful. I mean, he was a guy who shouldn't have a microphone. He was just terrible at it.
Who would you like to see replace Witten in the booth?
I haven't given that any thought at all. How about you? You want the job? What do you think? You ready?
I think I might be worse than Witten.
No, you're a professional broadcaster. Come on. I mean, the bottom line is they need another player. There's plenty of players out there. There's underrated guys. I'll give you an underrated guy. And underrated guys don't get the Monday night gig. That's the problem. Rich Gannon is a really underrated guy. I think he does a really good job. Very underrated guy as an analyst. One of the better guys out there. There's some good guys, young guys out there doing it. Hopefully they find one and, land a new one or land something imaginative. They need that. But he was just awful.
Mike, I'll give you imaginative, and there's no chance in hell it would ever happen, but still it's a fun thought. Johnny Manziel, kicked out of Canada. It'll never happen. Kicked out of Canada.
Too much baggage.
Not literally. He was banned from the CFL though, so he's looking for something to do. Do you think he belongs in the AAF? Your favorite, the Alliance there of American Football. The XFL is coming back next year, or should he just call it quits and find an inevitable job in the media? Because I do think that'll probably happen, just not necessarily in the main stage like that.
Great waste of talent. He had the ability to play on the NFL level if he didn't mess up his life. He really did. Despite his size, I mean, you've seen it with these other quarterbacks like Baker. Manziel, Saban said Manziel played against his team better than anybody had ever played against his team, ever in his life. That's how well he played. He was a natural, but he's also got some serious issues that he obviously hasn't been able to harness, and they're life-threatening issues. So he's got to get those straightened out first.
Let's talk Lakers. I know you're a LeBron guy, and he has missed a bunch of games, but that team on the whole, it's a mess, Mike. It's bigger than most people even expected. There's a very real chance LA misses the playoffs. Never mind wins a championship, misses the playoffs. Do you think LeBron regrets his decision, or is he just biding his time, hoping and praying a star is going to join him this summer?
I think he's biding his time. I think LA was a destination for a lot of reasons, especially the movie business, which you're seeing with Space Jam and you're going to see with other movies. LeBron wanted to be in the movie business. We know that. He wants to be in the movie business in front of the camera and behind the camera. We know that. That's part of his future. And that's, he's seen Kobe do it. He wants to do it. He had a house in Brentwood, as we know, so it was a natural move. I think the best thing that can happen to him is not make the playoffs this year. Let this body rest down the stretch. If you're not going to push for the playoffs, they'll take one push here for the playoffs. If they don't make it, if it's not within sight, I'd actually like to see LeBron tone it down, not play the games because that's not fair. But you know what? Play his 30 minutes a night in the regular season. He's played about 3 extra years with going to the finals 8 straight years. That's been about 3 extra years of seasons worth of stress on his body. This will be a very good year next year for LeBron when he has all this extra time off, when his body's resting in late April, May, June, which are usually incredibly stressful months for him. He will be a very strong LeBron next year. Now he's got to build his team, though. Now it's got to be done. And if he doesn't, well, then it becomes a disaster. But it doesn't become a disaster until he doesn't put the team together for next year. If he puts the team together for next year, whatever that means, I don't know who that means, whatever configuration is, if he brings in the players that make them a threat next year, and that is with Durant, I'm figuring leaving Golden State for parts unknown. Hopefully New York, but I mean, parts unknown. I think it'll be New York or the Clippers. I don't think he'll go with LeBron. So I think next year's the big year and the year that decides whether this was a good move or bad move. I think him not making the playoffs is a blessing in disguise this year.
Well, if it isn't the old slate breaker himself. DK Live editor Ben Zwyman here to help us out with this massive, ginormous 2-game slate in the NHL.
Huge! All right, Ben, we're playing price check, so you know the drill. Now, even though it's only a 2-game slate, as Emerson mentioned, there are 5 top centers on this slate. McDavid for $6,900, Eichel $6,800, Austin Matthews $6,600, John Tavares $6,400, and Sean Monahan for $6K. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I mean, first, I'd like to say the pricing on this slate is very weird, right? A lot of these guys are priced down. So definitely take that into consideration. There aren't a lot of goaltenders that are high-priced either, so you kind of have to get creative with your lineup construction, especially in GPPs. If you're trying to hit the winning lineup, you may have to leave a lot of salary on the board if you're stacking lines. But yeah, if I'm picking between these centers, Sean Monahan I like a lot at $6K. Flames played well on the road against the Leafs earlier in the season. Gaudreau, Monahan, Lindholm's line scored twice in that game. Leafs Flames should be a fast-paced, high-event hockey game. A lot of scoring chances, I'd assume. The Flames also play a lot better at home. You can easily fit, 2 of these 3 top centers into your lineups, though. It's pretty easy to, with the pricing, to fit in a guy like McDavid and Eichel in the same lineup, anything like that. You're going to have to get creative, like I said. Maybe not crazy about Austin Matthews, but again, anyone's in play. There's not really a price point where it's like, oh, I definitely can't play this guy. But yeah, I like that Monahan in the Flames top line tonight.
Same deal in the wing department. 5 top guys all over $6K. Marner, Draisaitl, Gaudreau, Lindholm, Skinner. Who you got?
Yeah, I mean, Draisaitl's the chalk. He's been absolutely insane since the beginning of February. 13 goals, 7 assists in 14 games. He's moved around a lot in the lineup, but he's back on the wing with McDavid on the top line. The Oilers torched the Sabres earlier in the season for 7 goals. That was back in January. A lot different now, but again, the Oilers are sort of playing better lately. They've won their past 2 games. The Sabres have not been playing well defensively. They've allowed 3.64 goals per game in the past month. You're not really going to play Gaudreau without Lindholm. You're going to stack those 2. Again, I like Draisaitl a lot if you're stacking with McDavid. Compared to an 8-game goal drought for Jeff Skinner. I kind of like Jeff Skinner a decent amount. I think he's sort of due. But again, you sort of have to consider a lot of these options on a 2-game slate. If you're making multiple lineups, you're going to want to stack a lot of different lines. So yeah, but I'd say Draisaitl is good if you're going in cash games.
All right, we're going to narrow it down a little bit for you on D to the top 2 priced options. So you got Flames captain Mark Giordano at $5,700 versus Toronto, and the Leafs top D-man Morgan Riley, $5,500 in the same game. So who do you like better?
Definitely Giordano. This price is great on him. Again, it's sort of weird, though, how the scaling is. He's still the top-priced defenseman, but, he's very affordable. Morgan Riley hasn't been as productive as earlier in the season, so I'm not crazy about him. I'd rather pay down at D. Also, a lot of very cheap guys. Ristolainen and Rasmus Dahlin on the Sabres stick out. Ristolainen's only $4,700. Dahlin's $4,200. Even Brandon Montour on the Sabres. They're all in the $4K range. A lot of cheap guys. Travis Hamonic for the Flames. I like Jake Muzzin at $3,900 a lot better than Morgan Riley paying up that much. I think especially considering ownership will be a big factor tonight on a 2-game slate. I think Muzzin will go a little bit lower owned. But yeah, you're going to have to really mix it up with your lineups. I don't know if you need to fit in both Gio and Morgan Riley. They have decent floors compared to everyone else. But yeah, it's going to be unpredictable with 2 games.
2 games, 4 goalies to choose from. Who's the play?
I actually like the 2 road goalies tonight. I think both of them will see a lot more shots than the other guys. The Flames don't really allow a lot of shots, so David Rittich is hard to trust. Mikko Koskinen for the Oilers, though. He made 41 saves against the Sabres earlier in the season. He's at a decent price point at $7,800. Frederik Andersen has been great on the road, 15-5-3. He's at $7,400. The Leafs allow a lot of shots, and the Flames maintain a lot of possession. They have high Corsi numbers, so we could see a scenario where Andersen sees a lot of shots. So even if he doesn't pick up the win, depending on how many goals are thrown around, Frederik Andersen could probably return value. I'd say he's a pretty safe option. So yeah, I'd probably lean Mikko Koskinen just to the way the Sabres are playing defensively. But yeah, either of those 2 road goalies are in good spots.
All right, slate approved pick time. Who is your lock of this 2-game slate, Zwyman?
Yeah, a little bit off the board. I could play it safe, but I'm going to go with Josh Curry, Oilers' third-line winger. He's at $2,800, so he'll give you a lot of flexibility in your lineup to pay up for those other guys we talked about. He's on the third line tonight, but he's got a 2-game point streak going. He's played well the past couple of games, so if he puts one in the net, he's going to be at low ownership. That's really what you're looking for tonight. So Josh Curry is sort of a pump play, but if he gets on the score sheet, he could really pay off for you.
Excellent work, Benjamin. You got a big date tonight?
No dates, but Rocky 4's on, so yeah, I think I'm booked for the next hour or so.
Yeah,
Wow.
Just crack open that pint of ice cream, bro. Enjoy it. Jessie and I will be talking basketball after this course preview from Reed Fowler, so you can watch that, Ben. Thanks.
How's it, golf fans? Reed Fowler for our next DK Live PGA course preview, the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill Lodge, located in Orlando, Florida. The course is a par 72, measures just over 7,400 yards, and is one of the strongest fields in tournament history due to the new schedule change as the last tournament before the Players, and historically being a regular tour stop by top pros like Brooks, Jason Day, and defending champ Rory McIlroy, who gained 10 strokes putting on the field last season. Bay Hill won't play as difficult as Honda last week, but has played tough in the past. Last year it ranked as the 16th most difficult with a scoring average right around par and yielding the 18th most bogeys in 2018. But this course still gives the players the ability to score, ranking inside the top half of total birdies made last season and the 16th most eagles. A par 72 this week, Bay Hill gives us one of the few tournaments early in the season with 4 par 5s, all ranking as the 4 easiest holes on the course. Those bogeys I was talking about, the most likely come from the 5 par 4s that measure between 450 to 500 yards and 3 of the par 3s that measure off over 200 yards and rank inside the top 10 in difficulty on this course. We also saw about 32% of the approach shots last year come from 200 plus yards out. Guys are taking a little less off the tee to make sure they keep it in the fairway and stay out of the thick rough. So a few key stats I'm focusing on are strokes gained par 5, strokes gained approach, as well as birdie or better gain, and a player I'm looking at this week is Hideki Matsuyama. Over the last 3 tournaments, Hideki ranks inside the top 26 in strokes gained par 5s, and if we expand out over the last 24 rounds, he's top 30 in par 4 scoring between 450 to 500 yards, elite with his long irons, and number 1 in strokes gained approach. API will be a great tune-up for the golfers who look to iron out their game before heading to the TPC Sawgrass. The players, the first time this tournament will tee off in March.
If you're considering playing in tonight's NBA Tiers contest on DraftKings, just know that we 100% support you doing so. And because we care, we're going to help you make the best decisions when it comes to building your Tiers lineup. That's just who we are.
Yes, we're good people like that. Welcome back, Julian Edlow and Gary Thorne. Speaking of good people. Before we get into Tears of Joy, though, what late-breaking lineup or injury news are you keeping an eye on that people at home need to know about leading up to lineups locking? Gary, you start us off.
I mean, AD is pretty important,
Yeah.
but I would say just the Heat. Right now with this team, not a day goes by where their injury report doesn't have at least 7 or 8 names on it, it feels like. Their entire rotation is sometimes a question mark. I know they had 5 guys listed as questionable going into Saturday's game. So, to find out the health of Whiteside, find out the availability of Dragic, I just think the Heat are such an interesting team when it kind of comes to the opportunities that open up because of an always lengthy IR.
All right, Julian, what about you, man?
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Davis is definitely one we want to see because that could make Julius Randle more valuable. And I think I saw DK Live actually tweeted us out some answers on the Heat. Hassan Whiteside is in and Goran Dragic is out. So there's your Miami news. Adjust accordingly. Bam Adebayo no longer the smash value that he has been. Kelly Olynyk in those past games.
The good news is tonight, lineup lock at 7:30, people. 7:30,
Ooh.
First game tips off.
Yeah, be sure to
Got a little
download
time.
that DK Live app for all the latest up-to-date updates. All right, let's roll the Tears of
Great
Joy open right here. Let's go. Garion, please take us to Tier 5 and who you're selecting and why.
Really came down to 2 point guards for this one. The aforementioned Lou Williams, and you've also got Drew Holiday, whose value is kind of, obviously impacted by the questionable Anthony Davis right now. But he just seems like such a high floor option. He's come out of the All-Star break just consistently over 40 DK FP for every single game. But when it comes to tiers, I kind of want to attack the ceiling. I think if you did this slate 100 times, Drew Holiday is probably the best of tier 4, like 35 times. But I think that Lou Williams just has such a higher ceiling against a Lakers team that is just not interested in playing defense right now. His usage rate is up around 36% since the Clippers traded, most people with a heartbeat and a pulse on their roster. I think I'm going to go with Lou just because of the matchup.
That is so great, Garion, but we're actually skipping Tier 4. That's why I said, who's your pick in Tier 5? So now we have that
Bonus
info,
pick.
But let's take Tier 5. Who's your pick in Tier 5?
Apologies.
It's all good,
It's
dude.
okay, man. It's okay.
Everyone's like, I'm freaking out here.
Yeah.
I want to help so much.
No,
Oh
it's
my
all
God.
good.
Thank you, man.
Mitchell Robinson. I'm going to go with Mitchell Robinson in this one. Obviously, the health of DeAndre Jordan is a factor here, but if he's not playing, Robinson's been so consistent. And Sacramento, really, to opposing interior players, has been fantastic. So generous all season long. The last 10 games, they were averaging the most opponent rebounds per game at nearly 52 a night. So if you get Mitchell Robinson to like 14, 15 rebounds, couple of blocks, I just think his upside is massive on this particular tier.
Okay, now, Julian, Tier 5. Who's your favorite player?
Oh, you don't want my pick for every tier?
No, just Tier 5.
Okay, 5. Brandon Ingram. I'll play by the rules here. Ingram's been so steady and kind of overlooked for the Lakers. They've been playing so poorly lately. LeBron's still been putting up numbers even though they've been losing. But Ingram, over the last 6 games, he's averaging over 37 minutes and over 42 DK points. He's been really consistent. No fewer than 34 DK points in any of those games. And this matchup should be really sped up against the Clippers. The last game of the night, I think it's probably going to be the highest scoring game of the night. The Clippers, just as bad as the Lakers are, the Clippers are almost as bad defensively. So I just think this sets up as a really nice spot for Ingram.
Take me to 6, please. Garion.
Yeah, this one was a tough one. There's not a ton of dudes I necessarily trust, but I think if you kind of mix just floor with minutes played and possible upside, I keep coming back to Josh Richardson. Even with Whiteside playing in this game, Richardson just seems like a lock to play 35 minutes. I mean, Whiteside's presence shouldn't really impact the guard rotation all that much. Atlanta has been giving up over 117 points per 100 possessions across their last 15 games. It's the worst defense in the Eastern Conference. I just think this is also going to be, I would say, a high-scoring game for the Heat, not necessarily a high-scoring game in general, but if it's not Richardson, it's probably Dennis Smith Jr., and I just don't like trusting Dennis Smith Jr.
Jules, 8 men in Tier 6. Who's your guy?
Yeah, so I considered stacking Kuzma with Brandon Ingram here just because I think so highly of the fantasy upside that Lakers-Clippers game does have. So that would be my number 2 guy. But in the end, I do agree with Gary and Josh Richardson. We can hit our home runs elsewhere on this slate and just kind of go for the safest value in Tier 6. Richardson's minutes are always there. I agree with Gary in the return of Whiteside. Since Dragic is still out, that should have nothing to do with Richardson's minutes, which have been really safe. He's just almost always good for 30 DK points, and he's actually played really well against the Hawks this season. He averages over 34 minutes in 3 games against them and close to 38 DraftKings points per game over those 3 outings. So I just think Richardson is the safest here, and the matchup against the Hawks should really help him out, get closer to that ceiling.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap up the show with you two gentlemen talking showdown picks for tonight's Clippers-Lakers contest right after we play some PGA pin placement.
And to warm you guys up, the PME studio has an Arnold Palmer Invitational treat for you right now.
Well, I got some breaking news for you. You ready?
Okay. Someone injured?
Tiger Woods has withdrawn from the Arnold Palmer Invitational.
Oh, damn. I'm betting Brooks right now.
Yeah, I'm going to bet Day right now, too, before that number.
Because I think that changes everything. Well, I think all those guys can drop points.
Yeah, I mean, you remove Tiger at 10-1. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll bet Day at 14 because he's no longer going to drop to... You say you're going to bet Brooks or Bryson?
Oh, wow. Sorry, because we were talking about Brooks. I'm going to bet Bryson. I do. I just mentioned Rose. Bryson... Oh, wow. I'm getting my Brysons and Brookses all over the place here. Brooks is a very interesting case. We always talk about he acknowledges he hates Poa. He doesn't think it helps him. He kind of just will never see him at Torrey. We'll never see him at Pebble. He went overseas. We joked how his season premiere was kind of in Mexico for North America outside of Tournament of Champions. And he was fantastic in a comfort zone course for him. And part of Brooks's beef, I don't know, should he, before Tiger withdrew, Brooks is the 5th guy on the odds board. It's so weird. So weird.
Yeah. So the statement from Tiger Woods says, unfortunately, due to a neck strain that I've had for a few weeks, I'm forced to withdraw from the API. I've been receiving treatment, but it hasn't improved enough to play. My lower back is fine, and I have no long-term concerns, and I hope to be ready for the Players' Championship next week.
Did we know? Listen, Tiger takes a swing. I'm sort of past the point of Tiger hitting the ball and then watching to see how his body is sort of reacting, whether he's clutching for a part of it. I'm past that, but did we see anything in Mexico? Any sort of, I don't remember seeing or even noticing any sort of effects. Maybe not that we would. Maybe he heard it, re-aggravated it playing with his kids. Interesting. I don't really know what to say other than he's obviously going to do everything he can to be where he needs to be for the tournaments that matter most to him.
Yeah, and I think when we're looking at this, especially if this is a precautionary thing, this works one of 2 ways for Tiger. This isn't a course that suits necessarily his current game as much as next week at Sawgrass does, where you don't need to be. It helps so much being an absolute bomber off the tee at Bay Hill. You don't need to be in order to win, but it really does make things a lot easier, especially on some of these par 5s, where at the Players, if he does end up playing, then it's a better situation for him and just how good his iron play has been. Also, I think this might be a break for us because we might get a better number on Tiger next week because people will be scared because of the injury.
Oh, geez, that kind of puts – I didn't even think about it because as I said off the top, next week was what we were going to look at. Yeah, I guess, but I don't know if I want to back any wounded animals.
Well, this is the whole thing. This is why we're going to get the better number. So instead of, I bet you for next week, if Tiger had played this week and he had played fine, let's say Tiger came T9 or something like that, he'd be 10-1 to win the Players next week. You might be able to get Tiger at 18-20 to 1 next week, maybe, because of this injury.
One more go around with our PGA peeps today. Looking ahead to this week's Arnold Palmer Invitational. Reed, Jeff, and Jeff, thank you so much for returning.
And it's PGA pin placement. This is where you guys predict where the following players will finish down in Orlando. Starting
O-Town.
with last year's, does anybody call it that?
I called it that for
O-Town.
5 years when I went to college there.
Okay, starting with last year's winner, Rory McIlroy. Reed, where's he going to finish?
That's a great, very underrated boy band as well, O-Town.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Top 5 for me for Rory. I mean, look at what he's done so far this season. I mean, really, he hasn't had outside a top 5 in his last 4 tournaments or close to it, right? And he's just hitting the ball so well. And we always want to see Rory do well before the Masters because obviously he wanted to make that final push for that final major there. But I mean, worst finish here is 27 since 2015. He's, obviously, like I said before, gained 10 strokes putting. And that's not necessarily the game that he needs to go into this. Obviously, he's strong off the tee. You need to keep it in the fairway. So not only is his distance going to bring those approach shots a lot closer, we see a bunch, around a third of these approach shots coming in from about 200 yards out. He's going to be hitting it from a 150, 175. You're going to have to need to spin these balls on these tough, hard greens. And so I really like Roy here for another top 5. Until he shows us that he's not going to be inside the top 5, he's going to turn these out.
Yeah, Jeff with a G. In 4 starts so far in 2019, yet to finish outside the top 5, as Reed mentioned there. I mean, he hasn't won in nearly a year, but he's still in good form. So what do you think?
Yeah, he hasn't won since this event last year, Jesse. I mean, everything is pointing towards Rory winning really soon. It's just a matter of, is it coming this week or next week? I'm going to err on the side of saying it comes next week, like a week after at the Players' Championship. I think Rory might just be due for one of those weeks where he just throws in like a T20, a T25. I mentioned earlier in this show how last year it all came down to his putter. He might just be in for like just an off putting week or something. This is just me speculating. Everything else is saying the indicators, his rolling stats, whatever. This guy's playing, top 3 player in the world right now, and he's due for a win. And he definitely does not mind this venue because win and T4 here in the last 2 years. I just think like he might have his eyes on the prize next week at the Players' Championship, a lot bigger championship there. So I'm going to say T20 for Rory, and he gets it done the week after.
Eisenband, I mean, we got T20 from Jeff. We got at least top 5 from Reed. Where are you going on this?
Going 1.
Oh!
I'm gonna say it. I think that, we talk about Rory with those 4 top 5s, and the big thing with Rory McIlroy's schedule this year that we haven't addressed is that he's playing more PGA Tour events than he has in the past. So he's been in the country. There's less travel than we've seen in the past for Rory McIlroy. And as we've talked about, this is an event that he won last year, that he's played well at. Yes, the putting helped him last year, but he's playing so much better this year than he was last year. I just think Rory's a man on a mission this year. I think that's part of the reason why he wanted to play more on the PGA Tour this year. And I know that's hard to ever take a guy to go number 1, but as Jeff just mentioned, all of the signs indicate it. So I'm going 1 here.
He's either winning this week or next week. I agree 100% with that. So, one of us is going to be right, Jeff.
Next week, TPC, Sawgrass, the Players, bring it, baby. Ulrich, Ricky Fowler, where does he finish? He's been a consistent contender at Bay Hill here, dating back to his, third place finish?
Yeah, I mean, the Rickster bounced back pretty nicely last week. I mean, it's a strong approach game throughout most of the week. He likes Florida. I mean, this guy really does get it done. Winner of the Honda Classic, winner at the Players already. Would not shock me if he added this event to his trophy case one day. I'm going to say he tops in for like another top 10. I'll put him at T8. It was a long week at the Honda Classic. That's the only reason I don't really like him more than that. At the same time, I think he's going to ride that momentum to one more big week. And I think a T9 finish is about right. I definitely don't hate targeting him here. Like I said, he's just a really solid Florida player. Seems to putt better on Bermuda. Definitely had the putter working in the final round last week. So I think T9's a good finishing spot for Ricky.
Eisenband, Fowler has shot par better in 10 of his last 12 rounds in Orlando.
I have a T5 here and a little story time.
Yes.
Yesterday was Sunday, right?
Yes.
Yesterday morning, I was driving through the great state of New Jersey, where DK Sportsbook is located.
Ooh.
And I placed 2 bets, one on Brooks Koepka to finish top 5 and one on Ricky Fowler to win, just based on what I thought I was seeing from Ricky through the first 3 days of the Honda Classic. He did not look good on those first, say, 11 holes yesterday. And then really a miraculous, I don't think we talk about 4 or 5 birdies on the last 7 holes. So he salvaged a bad round. I think he's going to take that momentum that was his bad round, and I expect him to play well now up in Orlando.
Reed with an R. Third place in 2013 includes top 15 finishes each of the last 2 years. This guy's pretty solid here, dude.
Yeah, you gotta give a shout out to Jessie Coffield for the expression. She's like the hype man for all of us here in the PGA segment. So I appreciate that. And you mentioned it, Emerson. Look, he loves this, and Ulrich mentioned it as well. Like, he does extremely well in Florida courses. Gains almost 2.5 strokes since 2014 on Florida courses. That puts him in the top 10, top 15 over the last 4 years. So of course he loves it out here. We saw that last year he gained approach 3 of the 4 rounds, and that one round right on Sunday, which is what we always see from Ricky, either Saturday or Sunday, is usually that the weekend really is his Achilles heel. So I got just outside the top 15, around 16th for Ricky. And I do think Jeff Eisenbed mentioned a good point in our last segment, is that I do think that you do have some fatigue for guys like Brooks and Ricky who went down the stretch at this course. Even though they live close, I do think there is a lot of potential fatigue here. And a lot of them, to what Ulrich was saying, that they're looking forward to TPC Sawgrass. This is the first year that the API is the week before. And so they're looking at this, eyeing it out a little bit. And Ricky, since the Farmers, he's only gained strokes approach on 1 of his last 2 rounds since January. And that really scares me about Ricky, is that if his irons aren't firing, and we haven't seen that yet, it's been a little bit better this year on the weekends. He just isn't putting everything together on the weekends just yet. So just outside the top 15 for me.
To the 1997 Bay Hill champion, Phil Mickelson, returning to Arnie's place for the first time since 2012. Where does he finish, Reed?
I mean, Phil's always an enigma. He's Emerson's favorite golfer. So I got to say top 30, just outside there. I just don't like Phil at this course. Look, he's only played here a couple of times. He got a top 25 in 2012, missed cut the next year. And where you worry about Phil is off the tee, and this rough is pretty thick. And yes, he's been playing a little bit better, obviously, of late, but when you look at a guy like Phil, if he's not putting it extremely well, if his irons and his wedges, he doesn't get a course where he can do that, it does scare you a little bit if he's wayward off the tee. We've seen him now, and this has been much of the talk earlier in the season, that he's gained about 6 miles per hour in his driver, and he's hitting it far. You don't necessarily need to hit it extremely far, and strokes gained off the tee doesn't necessarily correlate here. I just worry about if he gets offline a little bit in this thick rough and these greens that are extremely fast, that he's just not going to have a good weekend or a good week. So outside the top 30 for me.
Jeff with a G. He was a runner-up at Bay Hill in 01, finished T3 in 02. Where do you see him finishing this year?
I mean, I hate it when Reed brings up good points, but he brings up good points. Phil was whining about the rough possibly being up at the Players' Championship earlier in the year and how he might skip it. The rough is always up at Bay Hill. This is not, I don't like this venue for him at all. And I also feel like he might just be playing here as, again, just a warm-up for next week. So, he hasn't played here since 2013. And he missed the cut that year, by the way. And the 3 years before that, he was T24, T24, T30. Nothing spectacular at all. Coming off just an awful week in Mexico, too. I wouldn't be shocked if you saw a missed cut. I think he's Phil, though, and I think you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say T49.
Jeff with a J.
Yeah, I mean, I just echo a lot of what these guys are saying. I also think it's worth mentioning. Reed talked about the scheduling, guys being fatigued, and Jeff mentioned it too. There's a lot of guys playing Bay Hill just to prepare for the Players' Championship. That's why Phil Mickelson jumps in here. I'd add water. Never a good thing for Phil Mickelson, who likes to, run around the course and try to salvage everything. I will give you by the way, I give him a T25 because I still think he's having a better season than he's had as of late. So I still think he gets that. I think it's a generous T25. I'm looking at Phil right now, plus 2,800 for the Masters. I like Phil so much more at a tournament like that than the Arnold Palmer.
Dude, he better not skip the Players next week, Ulrich. That would be soft.
He said he might. This is the guy who skipped the U.S. Open, the one tournament he apparently really wants to win one year. So, I mean, who knows what this guy's going to do.
I know
I agree. I agree with
graduation.
100%. Masters is where his focus is right now, though.
I know he's had some
it's like
difficulties.
The new Roger Federer missing the French Open.
All right, we got to go. Tom Glennon, our producer, is yelling at us right now in our ear. You three, please enjoy your night. NBA Showdown picks are next. Chill, Tom.
Hey, I'm Tara Lanazak, and it's time for your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Breathe easy, Warrior fans. Klay Thompson is going to be all right. After he banged his knee during last Thursday's loss to the Orlando Magic and did not play Saturday against the 76ers, Yahoo Sports' Shams Charania reports that the MRI came back clean on the 5-time All-Star. Shams tweeted out that Thompson is expected to be day-to-day with a return based on how quickly he regains range of motion in his knee. The knee issue comes at a tough time for Thompson, who is playing some of his best basketball of the season. Clay's averaging over 24 points per game and shooting over 40% from beyond the arc since the All-Star break. The Warriors have been in a little bit of a funk, losing 3 of their last 5 games, so it's not the best time for one of their stars to go down. However, head coach Steve Kerr has had no problem resting his star players this season when he thinks they need it. So, don't expect Thompson to suit up against the Celtics on Tuesday if he's anything less than 100%.
We've reached that point in the show when you just can't take it anymore. So, we still got a lot of people watching right now. But for those of you who have stuck around, we appreciate you for it. And your reward is expert advice when it comes to making showdown picks.
GK Live's Julian Edlow and Gary and Thorne are here to help with this Clippers-Lakers showdown. Who's your captain, Jules?
Yeah, a guy we talked about earlier in the show. I think I'm going to go with Lou Williams here. He just makes a lot of sense in this matchup. He's been taking so many shots lately for the Clippers. He's well rested from yesterday's blowout over the Knicks. And he averages close to 48 DK points against the Lakers in this matchup this season. So a lot to like.
A lot to like. Gary, and who's your captain?
I will say it's probably going to end up being Lou Williams or probably Brandon Ingram across a multitude of lineups. But if you want to really go off the beaten path, I don't hate Patrick Beverley. He's just been playing a ton of minutes lately. And when he's passed very easy to pass thresholds of 10 points in 30 minutes played, he's averaged 45.8 DraftKings points since he's moved into the starting lineup for the Clippers. That's happened 8 times, and one of them was against these Lakers. I think he can score 10 points against just a really putrid defensive team. So maybe you don't want to captain him, but I think Patrick Beverley is going to be a key to a lot of my lineups tonight.
All right, Gary, give me someone on the opposite team as Beverley that you'd captain.
Ingram, just for price reasons, is probably going to have to fill that role. The problem with LeBron, who, we're all going to want LeBron in our lineups, but the problem with captaining LeBron tonight is his price point comes in at almost $20K. And there's just not a lot of obvious value below $4,000 with these two particular teams. The Lakers have basically been playing their starters 38 minutes a night the past 2 weeks. So it's hard to find enough value to captain LeBron. So if you're going to captain a Laker, it probably has to be Ingram.
All right, Joel, same thing for you.
Yeah, if I'm not going with Lou Williams, I'm going with the same price range on the other side, and that's Brandon Ingram, a guy that I talked about earlier in the show as well that's been really consistent. And I think the reason that Gary and I are looking in this price range is so that you can fit, these other guys with LeBron James in our lineups.
All right, so what about some value players you can find in this contest, Gary?
This one's going to sound kind of crazy, but if you do want to captain LeBron and still get those very valuable 9K players, even the 7K point guards into your lineup, Garrett Temple kind of doesn't belong where he's priced. I don't want to pump him up too much because his usage rate might be negative, and he's only averaging 0.55 DraftKings points per minute since he was traded from Memphis to the Clippers, but he is priced at the min tonight, $1,000. And he's still playing 20 minutes a game for the Clippers. Again, he doesn't do a lot, but this is the highest projected total of the night. The Lakers are a terrible defense. All he needs is 2 field goals and 6 rebounds, and he's reaching 11x value. So if you really want to go top heavy, I don't mind using Garrett Temple.
Julian, value, please.
Yeah, I'll go to the other side of the matchup and look at Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He's not quite the minimum, but he's $1,800, and similar to Garrett Temple, he plays around 20 minutes a game, and he's well known for his shooting, particularly three-point shooting. So when you can look down this cheap at a game with such a high total, in 2 games against the Clippers this year, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in only 18 minutes per game is averaging 17 DraftKings points. So if you get that type of scoring at just $1,800, you're well exceeding values, similar to what Garion said about Temple.
All right, guys, let's wrap it up with your slate-approved picks for this entire 7-game slate. 1 minute to go, Julian.
Yeah, it's kind of boring, but I have to go with LeBron James just because there's not that many options to pay up for, I think. I think a lot of the guys to pay up for, Giannis, Trae Young, are overpriced or not in that great a position. So I just kind of want to take the points in LeBron, given the pace of this game, given that LeBron's been scoring 60+ DK points with the Lakers looking absolutely terrible. I'll just take the points here. It's obvious in cash games, but even in GPPs, I think this is a night where you can take the points with LeBron and differentiate elsewhere, like at the center position, like at the guard positions. So just give me LeBron and we'll go from there.
Garion, we have 20 seconds. Slate approved pick.
Rudy Gobert.
Wow.
Well, that's a
excellent.
non-boring pick, and
All
I
right.
appreciate that.
Guys, this
Like
has
you,
been The
Jules.
Sweat. I'm Jessie. He's Emerson. We're going to be back on your TV or whatever you're watching on tomorrow at 6 p.m. We'll see you then.